अवधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Last time we saw, many of you were not here, so perhaps I should say I saw or some of us saw. And what did we see? We are talking about the portion in the Taittiriya Upanishad, second Valli, second chapter, section, where it talks of Brahma Astitvam. Astitvam means the existence of Brahma, Brahman's existence. And why is it important to know that? Because Brahman is not available for a handshake or for a namaste, not available for transaction. Itself does not do anything, and neither is it available for other people to play with it or do anything with it. It's just not available for transaction, not visible, not in any way interactive. And so this brings us to the question, does it even exist? Because what is our understanding of existence? If it exists, it should have certain characteristics. That which exists should exhibit certain characteristics. It should be available for the means of knowledge that I have. Sight, okay, if it's not available for sight, it should be available for touch. Like Vayu, wind, is not available for sight, but I know it exists. Why? Because if I go like this, I feel it. Whatever that which I feel, it is available for one sense organ. It is available also through the ears. I can hear the wind blow, so it's available for two sense organs. Even space, which is very subtle, is available for one sense organ. But Brahman, how many sense organs is it available for? None. Zero. So then, is it anumeya? Meaning, is it then to be intuited? Is it then to be inferred that it exists? That also I cannot do. Because why? Inference is also based on sight, sound, etc. So it cannot said to be operable by any means of knowledge available to me. Yet it exists. Why? Because I am it. Oh, just because you say that, I have to sit here and believe. No, not just because I say that, but because it's the only significant thing in the whole entire universe. And when the I is unpacked, and when we sift through the definition of the I and take away the things that are changing and take away the things that are finite, both are one and the same. But that which is changing is finite, that which is finite is always changing. It changes in order to come to an end and have a beginning, etc. So when we remove from our purview things that are changing, things that have a beginning, things that come to an end, what is left is Brahman. What is left? Some in the Viveka Chudamani, an eager student said, nothing is left. OMG, all that is there is nothing. The one who says nothing is left is the one that is very interesting. Yes. Is the one whose nature is very interesting, because that is the nature that is free of fear, and that is the nature that is free of sorrow, and that is Brahman in the form of I am. I am now. This is Brahman. Very simple. Brahman is not difficult because it is already me. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to look for it. It's already me. But yet the tendency is to look for it. Why? Because I want to be convinced it is there. It is there in a certain way, and I want to be convinced it is there, so I want to look for it. But here the idea is to not look for it. Why? Because I am it. So when we sift cognitively all the changing things and the finite things, what goes? Body goes. Body doesn't really go, not right now anyway, but it as though goes cognitively. Mind goes because again I can observe the mind. Anything that I can observe is finite, anything that I can observe is changing. This is another maxim which is very interesting. So when I remove from the purview everything that I can observe, that means all the changing things and the finite things are gone, and what remains in their wake is the unchanging I. The unchanging one has to be there in order to observe the changes. Without an unchanging, changeless being, the changes cannot be observed. This is simple physics. Simple, very simple. So if I have to perceive movement, the perception of movement happens from the standpoint of something that is still and unmoving. So the unmoving, changeless I then becomes the adhisthana, the truth of everything that changes. This is Vedanta 101. But we can't stop here. Because why? There is Vedanta 201. Simple. So what is Vedanta 201? Because first we have now we see that we have made a subtle difference. What's the difference? Me and everything else. Everything else changing, everything else finite, everything else observable, me not observed, infinite, changeless. How many things are there now? 2. And what is this Vedanta all about? Non-duality. That's why we need Vedanta 201. Because that which we have sifted somehow has to come together. Why should it come together? Because that is the reality. The reality is that there is only one non-dual. This is what the Shastra says. I cannot intuit. Therefore, since I cannot know this I by myself with the means of knowledge that I have to rely on the truth to tell me. I have to rely on the Shastra to reveal this. The Shastra itself becomes a way of knowing, and the Shastra, the teaching, tells me that you are great, you are wonderful, you are whole, you are infinite, you are limitless, you are happiness incarnate. Who doesn't want to hear this? Please raise your hands. And if you want to raise your hands, see me after class, okay? Yeah. So that's all I have to say. Because this is something which everybody wants. Nobody says, I don't want to be whole, I don't want to be happy, I don't want to be all these things, limitless. Everybody says yes to that. And so therefore the Shastra, the teachings, the revealed text in the form of the Taittiriya and other Upanishads become a source book to understand that which I cannot intuit, which I cannot know otherwise. Why can't I know it otherwise? Because I lack a means of knowledge. That's why. Everything that is known, like even this rose, needs a means of knowledge to know it. I have to look at it, and I can use so many means of knowledge. So first I see it. Suppose the eyesight is not there, then you can. It is fragrant. It is not a, what is that called? The modern roses. Silk. Yeah, no, not silk. It can be real also, real, so to speak. But it can be growing in the garden, but it doesn't have a smell. What are they called? Hybrid. Yeah, hybrid. So this is not hybrid. So if I can't see, I can have the fragrance. Let's say due to COVID or something, the sense of smell is not there. Then what? Then I can touch it. When I touch it, I'm touching Ishvara, really. They can make it out of silk and velvet, all these flowers they make. But then they can even spray some rose essence. So they can fool you, but the touch is definite. They cannot make this touch. This is God here. It's amazing. It's beautiful. So this way, I come to know the rose through 3 or 4 ways of knowing, because it lends itself as an object to be known. Brahman, the truth of myself, Atma, also called Atma, is not an object, and so it cannot be known as something separate from me. So, what we do in what is called Tvam Pada Vichara, an inquiry into the I, the truth of the I, first you have to sift and separate, so that you can look at what is really there. And what really shines is the uncomplaining one. Need we say more? Yes. Not the one that is full of complaints. This is not okay, that is not okay, this one did this, that one did that, why is it like this, why is it not like that? All these things are not there. So, no complaints. Immediately there is a relief, and so that is what is left behind. And that is what I want to see. In fact, that is what I want to be. So this sifting and separation allows me to really focus on that which is important and put aside other things, because the other things we have been taught is known as, they are collectively known as what? Mithya. Mithya is a reality statement. It means that which cannot be categorically affirmed, neither affirmed nor denied, is mithya. Mithya means that which is here, but it is not here to stay. That is what it is. It is here for now. It is right now here, and it is just cannot be said that this will always be like this. So mithya is everything that is changing and everything that is dependent. Then the next question we ask, now we have this duality, then the next question we ask is, what is this whole world of objects that I observe, what are they dependent on? It's a very important question. We can't just say dependent reality. What is it dependent on? Then the question comes, it is dependent on me. Oh, that's a big hubris. Dependent on me, come on. Even if I'm not there, these things continue. Yes, but remember the definition of I, not that which is attached to this body, mind, sense complex. It is that conscious awareness in which is the same in everybody. There's only one consciousness, one awareness that is there, and that is I. So, mithya depends on me means mithya depends on the I, which is Sat. We have seen this. Satyam, Sat, which is Sat. Mithya depends on Sat for its existence. Oh, that's just too much. I mean, how can you say mithya depends on Sat? Let us demonstrate. What is this? Pot. Don't get all Vedantin on me and start saying this is clay. Okay? Yeah. We are not there yet. Right now, what is this? Pot. Yeah. So here is this pot, but the pot is incapable of saying, I am a pot. Tada! Look at me. This is what we mean. Mithya is dependent on me. Until I looked for it, picked up and said, you are a pot. It was by itself. Yeah. It was not talking, it was not making itself known. It cannot. Because it is dependent on I, Sat, Sadvastu, in order to be known. It is Pramana Siddha, it is not Swatas Siddha. Swatas Siddha Vastu is only one in the world, in the universe. Swatas Siddha means self-evident. A fancy way of saying self-evident. So the self-evident I is the only thing that is self-evident. Everything else you look, Nothing else other than I is self-evident. Nothing else is self-evident. It cannot be. Mic, not self-evident. Table, not self-evident. Evident to me, but not self-evident by itself. And then what? Chair, not self-evident. Computer, not self-evident. Even AI is evident to me. Bots, not self-evident. I have to say this is a bot. Come on, now I have programmed you, do this. This is what it is. All the way it is like this. Nothing is self-evident other than this I, and everything depends on this I for its existence, for it being, coming to light. Meaning what? Chit. Sat and Chit are in its Sat and its Chit are in my hands. Really. Thank God it's like that. Actually, I wouldn't have it any other way. Otherwise, what happens? You serve yourself some food, and then the fork gets hungry. And you are bringing the fork full of food into the mouth. That's why I suppose it's called forklift. Yeah, same way. And bring the fork to the mouth, and then what happens? The fork says, wait. Swaha, I'm hungry. It eats. That is if the plate is not hungry first. If the plate is hungry, the fork is empty now. The plate has done swaha itself, but that doesn't happen, thank God. Thank God that doesn't happen. Why? Because this way I can have vyavahara, I can have transactions. I can have transaction of various kinds. I can do things with instruments. The mic becomes an instrument for talking. If the mic were self-aware, what would happen? It will say, what Vedanta, Shmedanta? I also have a few things to say. I've been listening to you for a long time and I'm not that interested. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about ceramics. I'm an expert actually. You just got one pot. I'm an expert in all kinds of things. I want to talk about break dancing. I want to talk about certain other art forms. I want to go to a museum. Why should I keep on amplifying you? Thank God that doesn't happen. So there is a big difference. There is a separation between the sentient and the insentient. And that which is insentient is non-separate from the sentient in the sense that it is dependent upon the sentient I for its revelation, in order for it to be used as an instrument. So first, when we separate between the sentient I, when we make a separation, and the insentient Jagat, the universe, then we are left hanging with this subtle duality. And how has that to be erased? How do we erase that duality? We go into the cause and effect. Sat, I, the cause, non-separate from the cause. This Sat, Brahman is the cause. Atma, I, is the cause of what? Of everything, starting with the 5 elements. I am the cause of this whole universe. And the whole universe gets the status of what? Hello? Yes. Effect. If I am the cause, the universe becomes effect. And the rule of the law here is the effect is non-separate from the cause. Oh, the cause is also non-separate from the effect? No. Cause is cause, effect is cause. This is Vedanta. This is basically what we have been studying, and we have been looking at several hetus. Hetus means causes for the existence of Brahman. And then one last one that we pursued, the last one that we saw was the prana, the existence of prana, and pranic functions is the existence of Brahman. prana is there, and then because two things become evident. Prana means all these other respiratory and other functions. So two things become very evident. One is that if breathing is taking place, because I'm not consciously breathing, even though in pranayama we consciously breathe, but I'm not consciously doing that all the time. If I were responsible for breathing, I would never sleep. I would always be awake. Good for Vedanta class. But nonetheless, I would always be awake. I would never go to sleep because I would be afraid that I'll stop breathing if I sleep. So that means what? That prana is not in my hands, it happens. And apana, the breathing out happens, breathing in happens. So this reveals a very, very important truth. And what is that important truth? That the existence of a cause. The existence of a cause, an intelligent cause, a wonderful cause, because of which the whole thing is set up in such a way that breathing happens. Not just for a human being. Even reptiles breathe, birds breathe, and fish also breathe. Everything breathes in order to be alive. Cockroaches also breathe. Everything breathes. And so therefore, the truth of this Jagat, which is Brahman, is there because if breathing is happening, just as we say, if breathing is happening, the person is alive. If breathing is happening, then Brahman is there. This is where we stopped. And then further, one more last cause for the existence of Brahman is given. Bhaya bhaya hetu. Bhaya bhaya hetutvad vidushaha avidushoho asti tad Brahma. Adi Shankara says this very beautifully. So, one more reason why Brahman exists is because it is the cause of fear, and it is also the cause of what? Fearlessness. Bhaya plus abhaya. Bhaya means fear. Abhaya means what? Fearlessness. Opposite of that. Na bhayam. No fear. Abhaya means no fear. So it is the cause of both fear and fearlessness. How is it the cause of fear? That is going to be told, in a small mantra. Bhishasmad vatah pavate bhishodeti suryah bhishasmad agnischendrascha mrityurdhavati panchama iti. It is the cause of fear because everything is so orderly. No, but I didn't like so many things in this universe. How do you say it is orderly? All the wrong people are on the rise. Everything is wrong. Well, it is how it is. Why? Because it cannot be how it is not. Simple. So, that is why it is orderly. Even the order includes disorder. In the order is so vast, it's not opposed to disorder, it is a meta order that includes the disorder. The disorder thrives within this order. So what you think is disorder is part of the order. It may not be what you made to order, that's all. So that means what? There is something as though out of fear of which the world functions in a certain way. The wind blows, the sun, so to speak, rises, or the earth moves, however you want to take it. If you want to be a stickler for accuracy, you can say, no, the sun doesn't rise, the earth moves. Okay, earth moves. And yesterday it moved a lot, right? We had an earthquake. We didn't feel it here, but wherever it was a very big one. And so, like this, there is an order, an unmistakable law, a series of laws in the universe, and which are infallible. And we say they are infallible because they can be studied. If it were fallible, it cannot be studied. It's infallible, that's why we can study it. That's why we can say these phenomena work in this particular way, in this particular manner. So, that way, the prana is one such thing. The prana also functions in a way that we don't know how it functions. They can study so much. How does prana function in the universe? Nobody knows. Pujya Swamiji used to say, all knowledge is up to one more question. That's where you exhaust. Like, what is this? Oh, I know, it's a flower. Yeah, but what is its name? Rose. But then why is it different from some other flower? I don't know. Why does this rose have this fragrance and that rose has another fragrance? I don't know. Same way in every branch of knowledge. Even in what is that, medicine also same thing. They will not say I don't know, they'll say we are working on it. So in this manner, what we find is a wonderful order which is described in the Upanishad as the cause of fear, so to speak. It's not really the cause of fear, but it's almost like when in a factory, on the shop floor, the supervisor is walking back and forth. And what are the workers doing? Just, head bent down, they're whatever they have supposed to do, they're doing. Whatever their portion of the manufacturing, whatever they have to do, they're doing. Then the supervisor, pleased that everything is going on hummingly well, leaves the room, leaves the shop floor, and one person is already scouting. Okay, they have left. Okay, then back to the talk, back to making plans for the weekend, back to saying this, that about the supervisor and the management and everything. Everything is different. So it's almost like there is some presence that because of which everything functions smoothly. Even when you think it is not functioning smoothly, it is functioning smoothly. This is what is called bhaya hetu. Bhaya means it's almost out of respect and because of whose all knowledge and all knowledge presence, the functioning of all aspects of the universe goes swimmingly well, without any glitches, without any hitches. Well, that's because you say the glitches are included in the order. Yes, that is something we have to bend our heads around. The glitches are included within the order, and it leaves us in a very funny place. I've thought about this a lot because it is when I say the glitches are included in the order, we only mean it at a cosmic collective level. This does not give the individual a pass to say, yes, I messed up and it's okay because it's part of the order. Okay, there we have to take individual responsibility. Why? Because that too is part of the order. Okay. You cannot say I messed up and I didn't do this. Why? Because I didn't feel like. And then, what is that? I didn't feel like doing laundry for what? 4 weeks. And then now all is left is a hanky to cry into. That's all. Now, why? Because it was meant to be that way. No. But why can't we say it's part of the order? You cannot say it's part of the order simply because you have free will. Yeah, if a dog doesn't do laundry, you can say it's part of the order. Yeah, much less a cat. Yeah. Cat does dry cleaning, that's all it'll do. Yeah, doesn't do, yeah. The dog doesn't do laundry, you cannot say, oh, it's a terrible dog. No, why? Because it's part of the order. It doesn't have free will. It doesn't have free will. Okay, I should wash my collar and I should wash underneath my collar. It doesn't have all that. Free will is not there. It's however the owner keeps it, it will be. It doesn't have free will. Cat doesn't have free will. You have free will. You made a choice not to do laundry. You made a choice to procrastinate. You made a choice to not do this, and then you cannot blame the order and say it's part of the order. It's not part of the order. And so this is what we have to understand. There's a little bit of a caveat here, because we can't see this as a all life pass. We have for the parks and everything, all day pass, season pass. This is not an all life pass from escaping karmic and individual and social responsibility. So this becomes bhaya hetu. And the same Brahman is for whom it is bhaya hetu, we have to understand this. For the avidwan. Avidwan means what? The one who doesn't know. Ajnani. The one who does not know I am Brahman. That one is constantly afraid. Puk, 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 puk fellow. All the time. All the time. Chicken hearted. Yes. Some noise, the person is always jumping. Some people are like that. They have seen me 2 minutes before, so they know I exist and I exist in their vicinity, they know very well. So I go away for 5 minutes and then I come back, They get easily startled, And I say, what's the matter? You just saw me 2 minutes ago. Yeah, but I didn't know you will be here in 2 minutes. So in 5 minutes you will be here. I didn't know that. So like this, the bhaya hetu, it becomes the Brahman as the cause of the universe. Ishvara here becomes bhaya hetu. Bhagavan is seen as bhaya, as the cause of fear. Why? Because I don't know this Bhagavan as non-separate from myself. I don't know that this is the Bhagavan that is ruling over the heart, sitting in my heart. This Bhaya Darshana is there, and as long as the Bhaya Darshan is there, when I am looking at everything separate, then what will happen? Then fear will come. In fact, all the Upanishads, most of the Upanishads are focused on fear removal. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and then Bhagavad Gita, and so many Upanishads, Taittiriya Upanishad, are all, many portions of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, they are all focused on fear removal. Some others are focused on sorrow removal. But fear is the key. Fear turns into sorrow and anger and all these things. Fear is a very primal emotion. So this fear, this fear, where we get startled at every silly thing, at every small thing, and then we laugh at ourselves, this fear becomes the very cause for fearlessness. Once I know that there is nothing other than me, that this Ishvara is also what? Myself alone. Rudram is like that. Rudram is again that which is designed to remove fear. That's why it's one of the holiest chants. It's called Rudropanishad. It is like an Upanishad. So you begin with Ishvara as a source of fear. OMG, where are you? What are you? Oh no! You are what? Karma phala data. You are the giver of the results of actions. Whose actions? Alas, my own actions. I wish I could say it's the neighbor's actions that are coming to me. But no, remember what we said about infallibility. It's my own action. The order being infallible, there is no mistake. Even the mail carrier can make a mistake and deliver the next door mail here. But here in this Brahman, there is no mistake. You cannot say, this god-awful karma cannot be mine. It must belong to somebody else. Not possible. It belongs to you and you alone, for you to endure. This means what? Bhagavan becomes a source of fear. And in the beginning of the Rudram, Bhagavan is visualized as a hunter. Hunting for what? Your own peace of mind. That's what Bhagavan wants. That's what she wants. Your own peace of mind. Why? By giving all these karmas that are tend to break your sanity, break your equanimity, if not the sanity. Break your equilibrium, break your samatha. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Here there is no yoga. One becomes ayogya. There is no possibility of yoga. And so what happens here is that the person is constantly in a place of fear of what is going to come next, especially if they know a little bit astrology. Oh, Shani is in the wrong place. OMG, what's going to happen? Shani is never in the right place. Never. Very rarely. Rare is the horoscope, where the Shani is in the correct place. Because what are the odds of being born with a Saturn in the 11th house? That's one of the few correct places. Saturn in the 11th house means you'll be, a political head of state. Or you'll be a big king if it was the ancient times. Big king, big queen, that kind of a thing. Big, or lots of money. I think we have to look into this Musk's horoscope. I'm sure he has Saturn in one of those exalted places. So this is something how it is. It's not. Saturn will always be in the wrong place for most people. And Rahu and Ketu, they were born to be in the wrong places. They are all malefic planets. Their existence is to just go and look at the horoscope and say, aha, okay, now I understand. This is what it is. They just affirm what is already happening. They're not the cause of it. What is the cause? Your own karma. And so here in the Sri Rudram, Shatarudriya, we see Bhagavan as hunting for my peace of mind with a bow and an arrow that is dipped, whose tip is dipped in what? Don't say poison, in my own karma. Sukrita and Dushkrita, both. So Sukrita means good karma, which gives me comfortable situations. But arrow is not really Sukrita. The Sukrita arrows are like dipped in flowers, made of flower arrow like Cupid, that kind of a imaginary thing. It's all flowers. It doesn't really do anything. So, but Dushkrita arrow is what is experienced. So the arrows dipped in Papa, whose Papa? My own Papa, from here or before here, is being aimed at me. So then the first Anuvaka of the Rudram is the primal fear of the Jiva about Ishvara, this unknown Ishvara who's out to get me. Therefore, there's a lot of propitiation. Keep your hands to yourself, oh God. They are so nice and strong, wonderful. It's just shameless, what is that, apple polishing. Yeah. Namaste Rudramanyava Utota Ishave Namaha. Namaste Astu Dhanvane. Namaha to your bow. What a fine bow you have. Bahubhyam. And look at the arms that are carrying this bow. Wonderful. You must have been working out at the gym. Heaven gym. Somewhere you've been working out. Look at those arms. Fantastic. Yata ishu shivatama shivam babhuvate dhanuhu. That arrow is quivering. It looks restless. It's about to fly off the bow. Om Shanti to the arrow. What is that arrow? What is that arrow dipped in? My own bad karma. So what do I want for it to do? To stay in the bow, not to be released. Don't release it. Okay? Because I am praying to the arrow in order to forestall its movement. Shivatama means let it be very peacefully sitting in the bow. And then the bow also should be Shivatama. You know why? Because if the bow is restless, by mistake you can just discharge the arrow. Let that mistake not happen. Ishuhu means arrow. Shivatama. And then Dhanuhu te. Your bow also should be Shivatama. And for your bow to be Shivatamaha, Shivatamaha means what? To be very peaceful and not discharging. Then what? Your mind also should be pleased. When you look at me, your mind should be pleased. Let me distract you so that you don't think about my karma all the time. This is how the whole first Anuvaka is there, like this. And then it continues. It continues like this because this difference between me and Bhagavan is because of this fear. The fear comes because of the guilt. I have done something wrong somewhere, sometime. That's why these horrible things are happening. And then, oh my God, 7.5 years of Saturn return. Why Saturn has to return? I don't know, other than to rhyme with Saturn. The word return rhymes with Saturn. So maybe they go together. I'm not sure. But then this Saturn has to keep returning and then trouble me, and then, one gets dejected. I'll never get anything done. I always have obstacles. Why? Because the Jupiter is in the wrong place. And then I never have any money. Why? Because the Venus is in the wrong place. That's why something or other is in the wrong place. And so therefore, one is always on, one is always on a precipice, worried, fearful, until one studies Vedanta. Even Rudram, when you study the whole thing, then it becomes very clear what is happening. You first surrender to everything that is there. You say Namaha, 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 and then that, that prepares one for Atmajnanam, for knowledge. So like this becomes Bhaya Hetu. Brahman becomes the cause of fear for whom? For the one who doesn't know that I am non-separate from this Ishvara. What karma? What korma? Nothing. There is no such thing. There is no karma. Why? Because I am not a karta. When the karta is falsified, the karma is falsified, then the same Brahman, when I understand this, becomes abhaya hetu. It becomes the cause of Brahman. Knowing Brahman becomes the cause of no fear. There is no fear at all. So therefore, bhaya hetu darshanat. And then Adi Shankara says, asti tad brahma. Therefore, Brahman is there. Then he says, sadvastu ashrayena hi abhayam bhavati. Na asadvastu ashrayena. So, then what is the difference, one may ask, between the person who knows Brahman and between the person who doesn't know Brahman? In the sense that how did the person who knows Brahman became a Brahman knower? Very simple. Says sadvastu ashrayena. Ashraya, by taking refuge in Sat. Who is Sat? I am Sat. Taking refuge in the I, that is not the body, not the mind, not the senses, not the karta, not the bhokta, none of the 5 koshas, not any of those things. By taking refuge in the I, which is Brahman, one becomes fearless. One becomes a vidwan. Sadvastu ashrayena. Ashraya means refuge. Refuge is always one in number. You cannot say, I have one refuge in Florida, and then I have one refuge in the Swiss Alps, and then I have one more refuge in California. You don't use those words. You can say, I have homes there. I have timeshare there, you can say. But refuge, when you think, it's like there is a kind of an ultimacy there. There is some way in which there is a finality there, and there is exclusivity there. Refuge means this is the ultimate. There is nothing else. I have taken refuge in this. Here I am, meaning there is no other place for me to go. That's why even the word refugee means what? They don't have a state. They are stateless for whatever reason. Because of certain atrocities in their country, human rights violation, whatever it is. So they come from various places and they have run. They have run and just caught on the plane, and they don't have, sometimes they may not even have identification because there is just some terrible civil war or whatever is happening. So that person is called refugee. So the refugee may go to some place in Europe, may go to America, may go somewhere, but then they are not thinking, okay, let's see what are my choices. Let me have a few places. No, you go to one place and then beg for clemency, take me. Same thing. So the word refuge has a certain finality there. and an exclusivity. There is nothing other than that. So sadvastu ashrayane means in ashrayane, seventh case, because in taking refuge in the sadvastu, one becomes abhaya, fearless. So how do I take refuge in the sadvastu? I know the asadvastu as asat. How do I know the asadvastu as asat? Because I live as sat. This, of course, is very far-fetched, because what do? We love to live in and among asad all the time. Asad means mithya. We want to live in everything that is changing. We want to enjoy that, even though it's changing all the time. I transfer the infinite onto finite places, objects and things and events. I transfer it. So there is a certain kind of a transference going on, and then the finite becomes a refuge because I cling on to it, thinking that it's infinite. When the finite is the refuge, what happens? It is the cause of fear, because whatever I cling on to is slipping away. It's like in the ancient times, when the burglars used to come in the house, they used to put lot of oil on their bodies. Oily burglar. Yes. Oily burglar used to come, and then what? You try to catch him, and then he slips away. Slips away and goes. Only his dhoti is in your hand. He has run away. That's all it is, You can't catch him. He has gone because he's very oily, and it's on purpose. And also the oiliness would help them to go between narrow bars. And then, so they would just shimmy in and out, and that is how it was. So they don't do it now, but perhaps it's too messy for the modern burglar. The modern burglar has other ways, they will just check your Facebook to make sure you're not at home, because people like to put photos of themselves traveling abroad and everything. And so they will just check you out on Facebook and then do whatever is needed, very clean. So they don't have to, pickle themselves in oil. But that's how it is. So as long as one is in asat, as long as one is constantly dealing with the finite, one is steeped in fear, and Brahman, like the oily burglar, I was going to say burger, no, oily burglar escapes. The oily robber escapes. And so Brahman also escapes. It's very elusive. I have a flash of happiness, I have a flash of insight, and then that's all it remains, a flash. Now you see me, now you don't. That kind of a situation. Because what? Gone, And so therefore, like this, what do we like to do? Generally speaking, we like to live in the world of anatma. Anatma means not I. Everything becomes, important. Every silly thing becomes important. We elevate it to the level of, I don't know what. Oh, he said, she said, this one said, that one said, why did that one say, why did this thing, why can't I have this? Well, you can't, that's all, you can't have it. Why? Well, you can't digest it. Why? You be born a cow next time, have 4 stomachs, so that possibility of not digesting is never there. What else to say? No, but I want this, I have to have this, I don't know what to do, I have to do this. Why is this person doing this? Why am I doing this? Why is this person not doing this? Why am I not doing this? This becomes our whole world. So if asad vastu ashrayane, in seeking refuge in the world of all names and forms, I am doing myself a great disservice. Because I continue to live in ajnanam, and as long as ajnanam is there, what is there? Fear is there. Sadvastu ashrayane, but because this person is clever and has understood the viveka between sat and asat, between satyam and mithya, and says, I choose satyam. Not an easy path at all. In fact, it's a path that is filled with what? Very, it's a path that is filled with a lot of difficulty in the beginning. And then great happiness at the end. This is what the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita also tells. Sattvic happiness is that which in the beginning is fraught with misery, but later on it becomes happy. And Rajasic happiness is that object-based happiness that makes you happy instantly, and then you spend a whole lifetime weeping over it. Tamasic happiness is what because we have discussed sattva and rajas, why leave out tamas? Tamasic happiness is that which makes you cry in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Adau, madhye, ante. Well, in all three times you are crying. That is kind of a tamasic happiness. Why it is called happiness? That is, that is yet to be seen. And this is not the Bhagavad Gita class. Okay, I'm reminding myself, and so we are not going to go there. So now this is what we do. We just want a life of instant gratification, and there is, in fact, a mistake here, because there is nothing more instant than Sat. Sat is always available. Yes, it instantly gratifies. When I come back to myself, I'm happy. Even if I don't know Vedanta, when I am one with myself, I'm happy without needing anything. What to talk of when I've studied Vedanta for so many years? So therefore, this is the Sadvastu, going after Sadvastu is actually very simple, but then it is fraught with fear because I think I'm missing out. This is called FOMO. Yeah, teenagers will tell you what that means. What is FOMO? Fear of missing out. They have all these acronyms. And one teenage girl was texting me. And then she said, MOS, SYL. SYL I understood, see you later. What is this MOS? Mother over shoulder, because mother was trying to see what she was saying, who she was talking to. And she happened to be complaining about the mother, so she wanted to end the test, so she said MOS. Yeah. They have all these clever ways of communicating. So, now what? Now, where does this leave us? This leaves us with very stark choices. When I choose Anatma, I get fear as prasada. That is my prasada. Gobs and gobs of fear. When I choose Atma, no fear. This is what is said in the second sentence. So, Sadvastu Ashrayena abhayam bhavati, asadvastu ashrayena bhaya nivritihi, na asadvastu ashrayena bhaya nivritihi upapadyate. Upapadyate is, it is not obtained. What is not obtained? Bhaya nivritihi. Bhaya nivritihi means freedom from fear is not a possibility. Katham abhaya hetutvam. What is the cause of abhaya? Brahman. What is this Brahman? This Brahman is that which is qualified by a few words. And what is that qualification? Yada he vaisha etasmin adrishye nyatme nirukte nilayane bhayam pratishtham vindate athaso bhayangato bhavati. Yada he vaisha etasminnudaram kurute athatasya bhayam bhavati tatveva bhayam vidusho manvanasya. This is the portion we are on, and here Adi Shankara says that taking refuge in Brahman becomes abhaya hetu, becomes a cause of fearlessness. Why? Because yada hi eva Eshaha, this person, who the sadhakaha, Eshaha sadhakaha, etasmin brahmani, in this Brahman. So people don't know what Brahman is. So Brahman is qualified by certain words which describe it here. Adrishye. Adrishye means invisible. Why is it invisible? Because anything that I see is subject to degeneration, disintegration, vikara, modification. So anything that I see is got drishta nashta svabhava. Even as I see it, it is growing old. It is dying. Just a matter of time. Even as I see it, it is going, and then one day it is gone. That's how it is. And so therefore, yada hi eshaha, in this Brahman, which is what? Not subject to sight. And when sight is denied for Brahman, it is also not subject to what? Hearing. It's not an object of sight, it's not an object of hearing. All those other 5 sense organs and anumana, all these things you have to bring in. So then, drishyam nama drashtavyam vikaraha. So whatever is seen is subject to vikara. Doesn't take long for even the pot to become what? Crackpot. So like this, everything is finite, everything is subject to vikara, and then what? Darshanarthatva darshanarthatvad vikarasya. Darshanarthatvat means artha here is not for the sake of. Darshanarthatvam means the vishaya. Darshanartha means that which is available for sight. So that which is available for sight, what happens to it? Vikara ensues. Definitely. Vikara means changes, modifications ensue. So darshanarthatvat vikarasya na drishyam adrishyam avikarah ityarthah. Whereas Brahman is na drishyam. What is that? Adrishyam. Invisible. Invisible means not subject to modification. So that which is invisible cannot lose an arm or a leg. Simple. Yeah, why? Because it just doesn't have them, and it's not subject to sight, and so therefore Brahman is vikara less, modification less, change less, and then what is that? Etasmin adrishye, meaning avikare. In this avikara, without vikara, avishaya bhute. It is not vishaya. It is not an object. In this non-objectifiable and therefore non-changeable Brahman, anatmye, anatmye, anatmiye it should be, but anyhow, anatmiye, chandasam I think, and then anatmiye means that which doesn't have a body. Asharire, Atma here is not Atma. Atma means the body, mind, sense complex, that which is not part of this body assemblage, and so it is free of the body. Anatmye asharire. And then he connects all of them. Yasmad adrishyam tasmad anatmyam. Because it is free of form, therefore it is free of being the body or having a body. Yasmad anatmyam tasmad aniruktam. So now it doesn't have a body, therefore what? Anirukta. Anirukta means it doesn't have a place. Doesn't have a place. It doesn't have a place to stay, because that which doesn't have a form does not require a place. And anirukta also means that which cannot be categorically said to be something. So it cannot be categorically said to be something. It doesn't have a place. It doesn't require a location. And then Vishesho hi niruchyate. Niruchyate means you can definitely say something about an object. Visheshascha vikaraha. So then that Vishesha in anything you describe is, what do you describe when you describe an object? You describe the modifications. You don't describe anything other than the modification. Avikaram cha brahma. Why? Sarva vikara hetutvat. It is the cause of all vikaras. It is the cause of everything in the world that has vikaras, but itself is what? Free of vikaras. Because if it has projected this world, Ishvara has projected this world, the world is full of what? Changes. Full of vikara. The world is only vikara. And what is nirvikara? Brahman is nirvikara, free of vikara. We'll stop here. We'll take it up next weekend, I think. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।